Yeah, hi guys. Welcome to the second episode of the Finishers and Decorators Forum podcast. Today I'm joined by James Wildish, and he is very well known in the community, spraying community, for UPVC spraying, kitchen spraying, running training, and now transitioning maybe into other things. So, hi James.
Good evening. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well. How are you?
Good. I'm good, thank you. Knackered?
So, yeah, long days for you, I hear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So yeah, Dulux had their open day today. So I went down yesterday to meet the team and help set up, and yeah, had a good fun day down there today. We actually went out for drinks and that last night as well. So it was a bit of a late one, not too much sleep, and a long day today. But I'm still
Brilliant.
awake.
So, what's been going on at the open day? Anything interesting?
Do you know what? Yeah, it was quite interesting. So they just had it was like a mini trade show. So they had a lot of suppliers there, and then just general decorators. A lot of the select decorators were invited down just to have a wander around, have a chat, do a bit of networking. So yeah,
Brilliant.
really interesting stuff going on there. They had an aerospace guy there, and he had this VR spraying system, and it was basically a training system that they use in the obviously in the aerospace industry because the cost of product and trying to spray an aeroplane to teach people, it's just this kit was just unreal, unbelievable bit of kit. It's yeah, I've never
I,
seen anything like it.
I think I've actually seen it before on a
Right.
video.
Okay.
It was only a very brief clip, but I'm pretty sure someone was spraying a car in it actually, rather than an aeroplane. But
Right.
maybe it
Okay.
wasn't. Well, maybe it wasn't the same thing. But it was pretty cool. It was,
Yeah.
had a little gun type controller on it, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it looked
This
really
is
cool.
ridiculously high tech. I mean, they've got this one down to even the products that you're spraying, the viscosity and just the feel of the gun, the amount of paint that's coming out. It's unreal. The settings on it, just everything. You can input so many things. So there's potential there for a big future for VR spray learning at some point. Probably
I gotta
a
say,
few years away, but
yeah, I gotta say, I, I mean, looking now, I'm not surprised someone's done it, right? But I didn't expect it when I saw it. I was like a bit blown away just by seeing it on the screen, sort of thing. So I bet it's amazing to try. Did you try it out or?
yeah, I had to go. Yeah, so it was my first go on an actual VR for a start. So that was just a bit like weird. It was a bit felt like being drunk, to be
Yeah,
honest.
yeah.
But
Did
once
you
I got
feel sick or?
no. It's just the visual, and it's just so weird having like a screen in your face that's so close. Yeah, it's just a bit of a weird experience, to be honest. I don't know how all these kids do it, playing these shooting games or whatever.
No, no.
It's crazy. But yeah, no, I had to go, and yeah, honestly, it was so realistic. It was unbelievable. Someone actually filmed me having a go as well, and in the background you could see the big screen, which had what I was seeing on. So it was yeah quite interesting to see afterwards as well. So I'm sure that'll be posted up somewhere at some point.
Wow.
That should be interesting.
Wow, I definitely want to see that.
Yes, yeah,
So
yeah,
obviously we've met up virtually, obviously today, so we could chat shop a bit about UPVC.
yes, yeah,
And I did have some questions that I'd written out here, which sort of, I thought might give people a bit of an insight into, what it takes. Maybe some insights into the business side of things as well. But um, you know, I'm sure you've got many things you want to talk about as well. So,
yeah.
um, like before you were a sprayer though,
Yeah.
what were you doing with yourself?
So I was just your bog standard decorator. So I started as a sole trader. I actually started doing rentals for a friend's parents' company. They owned a letting agents, and they had their own properties, and they had a few sort of outsiders that they were managing as well. So they had a decorator that didn't turn up one day, and they were urgent on having these rentals painted. So my mate said to me, "Look, do you want to come and help me just paint these out like in the evenings?" And that's what we did. We ended up setting up a little mini business, and we did that for six or 12 months, something like that. And I thought, you know what, I actually really enjoy this. Stupidly, I think now. But I ended up just going into being a sole trader, doing domestic work, just all the small jobs that you start off doing. Did that for a few years. Built up. I've always been a very keen learner. I've always wanted to be good at stuff that I do, and I take pride in what I do. So although I was effectively what most of the decorators on the forums would call a chancer, I I actually had a knack for it. I enjoyed it, and I put a lot of time and effort and investment into myself and the business effectively. So after a few years, I had a bit of a lucky break with a commercial job that just come in randomly, and I made a lot of money out of a single commercial job in a very short space of time. And I thought this is something to look at. This is where I want to go. I weren't sort of satisfied with just wandering around doing Mrs. Jones' living room or whatever. I wanted to really push this on and actually create a business. Unfortunately, with commercial work, it's a bit hit and miss, as a lot of the experienced guys will tell you. It's very, very easy to lose money. It's very easy for contractors to not pay up and find excuses and reasons to withhold money and things like that. So I did that for 3 or 4 years. I ended up with a team of around 18 painters. Some of those employed, the majority subcontractors, but doing some really nice jobs, to be fair. I think we were doing sort of probably £500,000 turnover a year at that time. And one of our bigger contractors went bust on us, owing me about £120,000. So that was a bit of a kick in the teeth. And I think about 6 months before that happened, I was a regular to the Painting and Decorated show in Coventry. About 6 months before this all happened, I saw Colorbond at the P&D show, and that sort of intrigued me a little bit, and I just took a lot of interest in that. So I started setting up something, just delving into it really, with a mate who was a window fitter while I was still doing the commercial stuff. But when this happened and I had to shut the company down, there was no way that I sort of ended up in a bit of personal debt. At the time, I'd been paying my guys, and obviously to be then owed that sort of money, there was no way of me personally recovering from that. And I'd taken out personal loans to pay my team, rather than business loans. So a bit of naivety there from someone who was a bit fresh in the bit green really in that industry. But I learned a hell of a lot from that, which I've obviously taken with me since then. But having already set up this little side thing, I thought, you know what, I'm going to venture properly into this, and I never want to touch a paintbrush again. And to be honest, I actually haven't. I had my own house decorated over the course of the last couple of years, and my wife kept saying, "Are you going to do it?" I was like, "No chance." So I actually had Harriet Stone. She's obviously well known on the forums.
Yeah.
So she come and decorate my living room and my bedroom, and has done some bits. So yeah,
Fantastic.
I would never do it again. So
Well, you made a promise and you stuck to it,
that's it. Yeah, no, I'm literally not interested in ever doing that again.
No.
um,
Yeah.
Sorry, I got in spraying fairly early on, into the once I'd sort of gone from the domestic to the commercial. It was I'd already delved into it a little bit. I actually was trained by Pete Wilkinson, who runs or is part of the Paint Tech Academy. This was before Paint Tech had formed, and I used to talk to Pete quite a lot on one of the forums. And I said, look, would you be interested in training me and a few of my guys in airless? So we went up to, I think he was in Preston, but we went up to Blackpool, booked a hotel in Blackpool. Thought, we'll have a couple of nights out while we're up there as well. That was horrific. I don't recommend that at all. But yeah, so we went up, done a bit of training with Pete, and just from that point, a lot of things just sort of snowballed, not just for me and my team, but also for Pete. Then obviously deciding that is something that he really wanted to do, and went on to form Paint Tech and go from there. But for us as well, we were then able to do bigger jobs faster. I mean, you know all the benefits of spraying. So yeah, it really sort of took off, and over those next few years, spraying was literally that was all I wanted to do. Obviously, you can't always do that. There is always going to be a bit of brushwork there, but I just fell in love with it. Really, going to work was fun and enjoyable. You looked forward to being able to get the gun out, get the machine out, and spray. So yeah, I think it was a bit of a natural progression, really, and I think the contracting falling apart at that time and just sort of delving into the UPVC. It all just fell together. It was just one of those things that if I could go back, I would do it exactly the same way again. The sickening thought of losing that sort of money is still there a little bit, but what's happened since then wouldn't have happened without that happening. So it's all positive for me. I don't look back and think, oh, do you know what I mean? There's no point in regretting it. It's there.
Ebbs and flows, isn't it? Ebbs and flows at the end of the day. Yeah. Well, you actually inadvertently answered my next two questions, so
well, okay.
I guess it was mainly about because I'd noticed obviously you were early into the game in UPVC, especially, and certainly obviously endless amounts of people have learnt from you, and certainly when there was a question to be asked about UPVC, you were the guy everyone was tagging. That's what I noticed. Yeah. Obviously, Jamie Bourne wasn't I don't think set up at the time. And
to be honest, me and Jamie and John Coates, who's based in Scotland, I think Jamie and John were already running airless spray training around that sort of time when I set up the training. But I think we were all in a WhatsApp group together, and we sort of actually had a bit of a collaboration, if you like, of ideas into what we're going to do. We're obviously all in different areas of the country, so it made sense to sort of get our ideas together, really. But yeah, I mean, that worked out in different ways for everybody. Obviously, Jamie's gone on to really go into the training, and has obviously turned that into a really, really good place that he's got there, and offering some really good courses and training. So,
for sure.
Mine was a little bit different, to be honest. I mean, because I was one of the very early ones into actually being out on site spraying the UPVC, it was a mixture of, again, timing, luck, a lot of things just together, and a bit of determination. But when I obviously made a website for the company, and because there was no competition, it ranked within months. So it didn't take long. The first 3 or 4 years, all of my work was just organic. I had no advertising costs, no marketing costs at all. Everything was just organic. And it was incredible compared to the marketing spends that you'd have for the commercial work. I mean, it was just, I couldn't believe it. I mean, I actually made more profit in the first year of doing the UPVC than I did at the highest profit point with the commercial contracting, which is unreal. I mean, there was nowhere near the same turnover, but it didn't need to be for the UPVC. It was
higher margins.
It was a massive, massive eye opener, and it was something that just sort of shocked me that more people weren't doing it. So as it sort of increased with popularity and people starting to ask questions about it, I think it was through COVID when I thought, you know what, I'm getting so many people asking these questions. I need to set something up. There's nothing out there that is just for UPVC. I mean, I don't think Jamie was doing the UPVC at the time. I don't think anybody was. I think there was a guy, I think around Nottingham, who was doing a course, but I'd heard a lot of stuff um, about the courses, and it didn't sound like it was as in depth as it should be. It was sort of something a bit different, and I'd obviously been to Colorbond and done what they call their training, which was just sort of a bit of a sales pitch. I mean, it was 25 quid. You didn't really expect anything from that. It was just, it was like, here, have a go at this product. This is what we sell, kind of thing. So I saw a bit of a gap in the market. I saw that obviously I was answering a lot of questions on these forums, and there was a lot more people getting interested. So I just thought, you know what, I'm going to set up, write a course, and set it up. And that's what I did. And I think between the middle of COVID and probably about 18 to 24 months ago, I've trained over 200 people just in UPVC or kitchen spraying. So it snowballed, and it did a lot. It did a lot better than I ever expected. It was just sort of a little bit of a side thing for me, really. Just, can I spend a week here doing courses every so often? And all of a sudden, it just went absolutely crazy. But I really enjoyed the teaching. But because I also had work on and I had teams, it was too much, and I didn't have the biggest workshop. And when you're doing 3 or 4 kitchens at a time as well, there was just no space. I really had to schedule things perfectly to allow the time and the space to then have people in for the training. Sure. Didn't really work as an all-in-one sort of package. So I'd sort of slow that down. I think I probably would have done more of the training if I didn't have the teams at the time, because they were reliant on work and needing the workshop as well. I think if I'd just been on my own sole trader, I would have definitely gone down that route. But I think I enjoy being out on site as well, which is why I've kind of gone the way that I have at the moment. I'm kind of a bit of a hybrid role at the minute. So I'm running the business, I'm doing a couple of little side things, and then every so often, after now I'm sort of recovered from the surgery, I'm back out on site doing bits in the sun. So I like that outdoor. I like the summer stuff. So I couldn't ever just be sort of office based or just training based. I'd always want to be doing something outside.
For sure. I saw you made your triumphant return recently, back out again with the gentleman out on site spraying some railings, I believe.
Yes, I've done a few bits. Yes, I've done some railings. I was in Battersea a few weeks ago doing a load of aluminium coping cappings for a big contractor that had damaged a load of bits in fitting or just storing before fitting. And then I've also done some little bits. I've done some front doors. I've done a couple of houses, just the UPVC windows, and I did a horrible garage door last week as well. One of those big double ones with all the bridges in it, the up and overs.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Previously painted about 1 million times and needed sanding right back to the bare metal. So that was fun.
Yeah, we came across one very similar recently, and it was a pig, to be honest. Especially the sanding part of it. It was one of the ones with the little sections of small rounded ridges. It was a nightmare. I had to fold some paper over to go down the gaps and everything, you know. But in terms of, you know, for your, call it side job kind of stuff now, or, you know, just in general, UPVC, garage doors, composite doors, that kind of thing, conservatories, what would you say are the most important consideration for somebody who was starting out in the game now? What should they be focusing on?
I think if you are a sole trader, you're working on your own. I think doing the windows in a way that I would recommend doing them would be difficult, because I think removing the sashes, the opening sashes, is important to get a top job on them. I think to do that on your own, especially if you're talking first floor or whatever, it's too much of a risk. So I think front doors and garage doors are something that you can go straight into. With, I mean, going into the UPVC, there's very little investment compared to any other type of spraying. I mean, you're not talking 1,800 quid for an airless machine. You are literally talking probably £1,000, 1,200 quid all in. And you can make your money back very, very quickly with that, compared to some of those bigger machines that you need for the decorating stuff. So,
Sure, yeah.
I mean, front. I've actually got one of the guys who was early on my courses. He works through the week for a company as a decorator, and he come along and he's got a contact who was in the UPVC window fitting sector that had a lot of sort of damages and stuff like that. They needed bits sprayed here and there. So he come along more just to sort of help his friend and earn a bit on the side. What he's actually ended up doing is Saturdays and Sundays, he books in front doors, and he'll go and do 2 or 3 front doors every weekend. And he can make as much in that weekend, if not more, than what he does for those 5 days a week working for a company. So there's a lot of options out there. I mean, for me, the price to spray a front door, a composite front door, is £295. I've been that price for a long time. At the moment, I've restructured my company, rebranded. Previously, I was VAT registered. At the moment, I'm not. So that £295, that would have been £295 plus VAT. And I think you'll find most people are charging anything. Most people who are doing a decent job are charging between sort of £250 to £350 for a front door. If you learn how to mask it, how to prep it correctly, and you know how to spray, that is a 2.5 hour job at most. So straight away, there is massive profits to be earned in doing those, and they're actually quite a simple thing to do. So I would say to somebody who's new into it, definitely start there. 100%.
And in terms of, and I do totally agree with you, it's definitely a 2-man job for taking the windows out, the openers out, and we realised pretty quickly that it's in some ways quicker to have 2 sprayers as opposed to a sprayer and a labourer, I think. Depends on how many windows you want to do in a day, but I do think there is a distinct difference between having a labourer with 1 sprayer and having 2 sprayers. It depends how competent your labourer is, I suppose, and how used to that kind of work they are. Because if they are doing that kind of work a lot, you can get them doing more stuff. But yeah, I mean, if we were just to talk like brand fresh new into being a sprayer, or a brand fresh into being a labourer, I think that you'll do better with the sprayer potentially.
100%, yeah. I think it depends. I mean, I think it works to have a system, have a process that is followed all of the time. And once you've got your staff in, they're trained, they've been doing it 6 months, 12 months, they know what they're doing. Everything runs like clockwork. So we had a process. We'd mix it up. The minimum we'd have on site would be 2, but we'd normally have, depending on the number of windows, obviously, and the money on the job, but we'd quite often have 3 or 4 on most jobs, if it's not just sort of two up, 2 down, or whatever. But you can then start to get this process where actually you have 2 people taking out the first 2 or 3 windows, get those masked, and then the sprayer can start spraying while the other guys are then masking up the rest. And if you've got something to just keep flowing with then as well, that worked really well for us on the site. And it's one of those, we sort of set time limits. So we want to be spraying the first piece by 10 o'clock. We then want to make sure that we're sort of finished spraying by 3 o'clock, because you've got demasking, you've got to have an hour and a half or so to refit the windows, clean the glass, and all those little bits and bobs at the end. So we had sort of set targets, and we didn't really say, right, let's go and do 15 of these windows today. We'd sort of continue that run, and once those sort of time scales were hit, we'd then sort of take that into consideration and see, right, okay, do we want to do a bit of a late one today, get this job finished and pull something else forward tomorrow? Or there's a bit of sort of play with it. Obviously, weather permitting as well. So, yeah, I just think it's one of those that if you have a system, have a process, and everyone sort of knows their role and they've been trained properly in those roles, everything runs so smoothly.
For sure.
The big difference with the UPVC is that there is very little prep in terms of, I mean, with your kitchens or with your joinery, you're not sanding edges for hours and filling, and it's a really simple process. The cleaning and the cutting out the silicon. I mean, the silicon's probably the worst part of the job, to be fair, and one of the longest, really, for a single window. Other than that, there's not a great deal to it. It's not a difficult thing to get into.
No.
So I do think, as sort of an option for a decorator who's never sprayed, it's a really simple thing to go into from the beginning and start to learn there, rather than with the airless, which, I mean, at the end of the day, it is all just paint, and if anything does go wrong, there is always a fix. But I just think with airless, they can throw out so much paint. It's one of those.
Chasing it.
Yeah,
Chasing the paint a little bit. Yeah, we talk about it actually in the forum a fair bit. Airless is like chasing paint, and it sort of does actually fit into one of my later questions, I guess. So, well, I was going to say in regards to gear, I know what I use. I know what a lot of people seem to be using. What's your journey with it, and why shouldn't we be using airless on UPVC?
Right. Okay, that is a very interesting question. So I actually started out with a 100 litre machine mark compressor in the back of the van with about 50 meters of hose. So I'd have the back door open of the van, that running around to the back of the house, up and away you go. Obviously, that's very loud. That was an oil-filled one when I first started as well. So just crap, contaminated air, just not good. But you start and you learn. I've sort of transitioned from that into using the Gentlins that you've obviously already spoken about. They're just so mobile. They're light, they're quiet compared to everything else. They're clean. And again, I will still use longer hoses if I need to, rather than having to drag it all around. But they don't take up any space at all. I went from filling up my Transit Custom with all of the gear to then having a truck, and I was working out the back of the truck for a long time, which obviously the space is absolutely minimal in those, really.
100%.
So there's not much gear you need. My preferred gun would be the DeVilbiss SRI ProLite, the little micro one, and that I find works absolutely spot on.
Amazing gun.
Yeah. Fan wise, quite small because it's a small gun, but I don't feel, even for big things like garage doors and stuff like that, you can dial them so that they are still chucking out a fair bit of paint, and they do still get coverage done.
I agree with you that I do find, compared to some guns, the SRI can be a little bit light on fluid delivery. I don't know if you've noticed that compared to some other guns. It's not, I don't think it would be suited for a lot of types of work, basically. And certainly if you were wanting to put a little bit more paint on because maybe it's a bit hot, I don't think that gun is maybe the one for that, but it is an amazing gun.
It's one that I've used for a long time, and the comfort of it in my head, it just feels like it fits. It's just one of those. It's just that I'm really suited to it. I've tried quite a lot of guns, to be fair. I actually used, I know Sprayman was selling the Iwata AZ3, whatever they are, the cheap
HDE,
ones. Yeah, the budget ones. And to be fair, I had my teams using those at the beginning, because obviously I wasn't going to be spending 400 quid on guns for the whole team. And the results from those, I mean, it doesn't matter if you're a good sprayer, achieve a result with whatever you're given, to an extent. But I just feel that those guns they're actually a decent enough gun for a beginner, somebody who's going to maybe do a little bit and doesn't want to spend 400-500 quid on a top range gun. I got absolutely fine results with it. My team have got absolutely fine results with it. But in terms of going from that to one of the higher end guns, there is quite a big difference in just the feel and the quality.
For sure.
Yeah.
I certainly found with the Iwata gun, the fan small, very small,
Yeah.
and again, it's like I do think it's in a good price bracket for what it is. I think in the same bracket though, if you've got the air for it, I think there is a better option. And we've used it a lot on UPVC, and I do talk about it quite a bit, which is the FLG5.
Yeah, I did use those as well. They're definitely a better gun than the Iwata, but I wasn't massively keen. To be honest with you, I think the bulkiness and just the size of those bigger guns, for me, I've just completely gone the other way. I mean, I used to use in the workshop the GTI Pro Lights.
Yeah.
They're a full size gun, but again, they're very comfortable to use, and I just think I've transitioned from that to the little small micro guns, the little spot repair guns, and they're just, for me, it's comfortable.
Yeah.
I think everyone's a bit different. Everyone sprays a little bit different as well. I mean, if you spray quite a bit faster and you're applying the paint quite quickly, I think lighter guns are a lot better for that. The smaller guns, and that's sort of my take.
For sure. I mean, I could be entirely wrong about this. Well, not entirely wrong, because I know it is to some extent just a fact. But there are some outliers to this, is what I guess I'm saying. But if you're spraying a mixture of water-based and solvents, you are going to inevitably end up with a mixture of full size and smaller guns. If you like smaller guns, that is. Only because miniguns don't come in 1.8 and above needle sizes typically. There is, I think, a couple of they are A&I guns. I believe they do a minigun in 1.8 and 2.0. Yeah, but they need another air cap. That's what I remember for those needle sizes. So I guess, it's not a one size fits all, but for the most part, you can't really get miniguns in 1.8s and stuff. And so I have been finding myself using the Iwata W400 a lot, which, like, when you think of the Iwata AZ3 HTE and then the W400, they're worlds apart in terms of how they perform. They're almost the antithesis of each other. So you've got one with a really small fan, not much fluid delivery, in my opinion. And then you've got a Canon with an absolutely enormous fan that you have to dial back for any kind of regular spraying, basically. Because, I mean, I've come to realize now from watching more automotive spraying videos online that they're quite popular in the car spraying world, the W400, and they seem to be used a lot for clear coat, which tells me they're probably pumping. That's why they pump a lot of fluid. So in terms of you did touch a little bit on this in what we were talking about a few minutes ago with the UPVC side of things, and it did actually pique my interest because you were talking about timings of when you try and do certain things on the job, and certainly we realised basically that midday is like the last time you can spray an opener, essentially. Now, obviously, it depends on the weather to some extent, because if it was a little bit muggy, probably aren't going to get away with that, and you want to be doing them a bit earlier. I mean, that is very much the very latest. We're typically spraying them about 10:30, and then we're generally done spraying them by 11:30, and then we're having a break, and then we're getting on with the frame sections. And I don't know if you had any particular other insights timings wise that you found helped you stay on track with a job or pricing them
Yeah.
or anything like that?
So, in terms of spraying ready for the refit, are you talking about that sort of 4 hours for the touch dry time before you're going to imprint on those windows? Is
Well,
I mean,
I mean,
just
certainly we found that we don't need 4 hours for them to be dry enough to be refit. We
yeah,
can still refit them at about 3, but just as long as they're not done after midday, we should be
right, right, okay,
pretty
that's
good.
interesting. I mean, we've got this down that after an hour we can fit, so we could spray up till 3, 4 o'clock, definitely
Wow,
enough.
yeah. Oh, okay.
Uh, but I think that comes at her. I mean, this is something that took time because the first 5 or 6 times you've got a new guy and he's the one holding the window to put it in. His hand comes around the front, and you're like,
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
once they've
Nightmare.
made it like a couple of times, and then you're taking it back and going again.
Yeah.
Um, they learn quickly.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean,
So,
maybe we're being a little bit too cautious from
yeah,
the sounds of
probably.
it.
It sounds like it. I mean, with those UPVC windows, they've got obviously they overlap, don't they? They've got the
Hmm.
rebates effectively. So
Yeah,
there's always like a gap that you can put your finger in that's not
for sure. Yeah, we're not
quite so
touching
easy.
the front. That's for sure. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
we're generally we're definitely um keeping our fingers off the painted sections, but um yeah, I mean, obviously I'm aware you're using accelerated thinners, etc.
yeah,
With your products, and certainly we are doing the same. So I think we are working under roughly similar
yeah. Sure.
parameters. Perhaps it's the ambient conditions. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Perhaps maybe we could literally just go for it, and maybe a little bit quicker. But we've certainly been trying to get the openers done by midday, so that we can at least um, refit them with no concerns. Anyway,
yeah.
I mean, I know you could be on the bleeding edge and sort of really push it, and we have done that in the past, if I'm honest, on a few occasions. But um, yeah, so
Yeah.
in terms of you know your processes, obviously you definitely do appear to have processes for a lot of what you do,
Yes.
and I'm assuming that's covering things such as abrasives, things that you're using on these windows under certain scenarios. Um, could you perhaps tell us a little bit about what you're using under any particular scenarios? Standard prep, maybe potentially if you're finding masonry drips on the windows, that kind of,
Yeah.
that kind of
So
thing.
with a lot of the UPVC products that are out there, the standard consensus is panel wiped clean with a red scotch to key up. With us, I actually use standard thinners most of the time, or acetone. Acetone got a bit more expensive after COVID or through COVID, so we kind of eased off a little bit on that. Then, obviously, it's a much cleaner chemical to use for stuff like that. But on your white UPVC, as long as it's not foil wrapped, we'll use standard thinners. And I just find that cuts through stuff quickly. As long as you're not leaving big drips on there, sitting on there for a period of time, you are just wiping it off. We sort of give the windows a once round with it, and then we'll go straight back to it and give it another thorough clean round. And that tends to work for most of the, like you say, the masonry paint drips and stuff like that. It softens it up pretty quickly with a couple of goes. But also, we will occasionally, if we've cut out silicon, you'll find that some of the silicons will sort of go a bit gunky and stick to the window. It goes a bit static. It's just a bit horrible to try and get that off with something like thinners or panel wipe, because it just statics up. So we actually just use like big wipes or uni wipes, whatever they are, the brine wipes, and give those a wipe down with that first. Once that's dried off a bit, again, just use thinners just to go over that and make sure that's properly degreased. So it's a simple process, but I think too many people were sort of told, right, this is prep clean or whatever the brands call it. It's basically, it is always panel white.
Yeah.
Not quite strong enough. I know they're concerned more for sort of, they don't want them damaging the windows or anything like that with a harsh solvent. But I think as long as you're careful and you're getting that on, getting any excess off, it evaporates so quickly. There's no damage to be caused there.
For
But
sure.
I would say just be very careful of that on your foil wrapped windows, like your rosewood ones and things like that, because that can obviously soften up the wrap there, and then you end up with problems. So,
For sure, yeah. And I don't know if you've experienced this, but certainly I've noticed there's a lot of those being resprayed essentially with
yes, yeah, yeah,
the four windows, because I think they've got to an age now where people are a bit sick of them,
yes,
honestly.
100%.
And they look dated.
Yeah,
So yeah, they're kind of all over the the holiday lodge parks and
yeah,
things of
yeah,
that
yeah,
nature,
yeah. And then you have the odd estates here that were all sort of built in the 80s,
covered in them.
whatever, covered in them, and yeah. So yeah, we do find ourselves doing those at white as well more often than not necessarily anthracite like.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes, that is quite a big part of the business, really.
For sure. I mean, I certainly, before we did our first four windows that were like the rosewood kind of
Yeah,
colour, shade or whatever you want to call it, we were sort of thinking to go anthracite that we'd need to white them out first or
right.
something along those lines. But actually, it was, they went in
Yeah,
the same amount of coats as normal, which
yeah,
was
yeah,
absolute result, to be quite
yeah,
honest with you. We've certainly found some pitfalls in some jobs, to be more problematic than others, but that wasn't one of them actually. We thought there'd be a lot more troubles. Luckily, the windows and the foil was pretty sound, so
yeah.
that can be troublesome. But I think at that point, you're almost better off replacing a window and then matching, to that window almost.
Yeah, so that is something that we get asked quite a lot, and I used to get asked running the courses if the foil is coming off, if there's bits missing or it's bubbled up, how do you repair that? And my honest answer for that is don't repair it. They need to either replace the sash or replace whatever it is. The
Hmm.
cost for us to try and make that look good, and you're never going to be able to match that grain exactly, because they are textured, obviously. It's just they may as well replace the windows once they've gone like that. What is to say that in 12 months' time you've sprayed the rest of it up, and all of a sudden you're getting bubbling coming up on an area
100%.
that you've sprayed, and then it's your problem. They're going to come to
Definitely.
you, you sprayed this is bubbled up. So I would say that is one thing that we are very, very sort of careful on, and don't want to sort of put our name to any sort of repairs like that, because there's no guarantee that the rest of it is gonna last.
100%.
It's going to fail at some point. With the rosewoods, the only real issues that I found with coating them up is when you are going white. We were using just standard, I don't know, round 9003 most of the time for that. What we'd end up having to do is we'd double coat it, let that dry, then double coat it again, just
Oh
because
yeah.
brown, the reds in that would really sort of bleed through a little bit.
Yeah.
You could see that, and even sometimes with like some of the lighter greys, maybe the 7001, some of the really light ones, that bit of red would just sort of seep through a little bit. However, my local PPG refinishing, who supply the ceramics that
Hmm.
I use, they have knocked up a special formula for me where they add the extra
The
pigment,
extra white. Oh yeah.
yeah, the extra drop of white. So yeah, it's that now covers exactly the same as every other colour. So that saved sort of a little bit of a job on those. So that's something I'd always recommend. Speak to your supplier, whoever it may be. Get your extra drop of white in that.
For sure. And I think that actually applies to a lot more situations than just rosewood UPVC wrapped windows. I think that a lot of whites can be the problem.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, you know, Certainly spraying joinery, whites are priced with an extra coat for the most
Yeah.
part for us. Pretty much regardless of what it's going over. because white's got to be solid,
Yeah, yeah,
and if it's not, it can be horrific to look at. So um, obviously we've touched on a little bit of an edge case, you want to call it, in UPVC, which is the foil wrapped windows. How would you attack a job where you are spraying UPVC and composite, or potentially if you are dealing with any kind of other GRP surfaces? Do you have you in the past used any other products other than Ceramix, or are you Ceramix all the way?
yeah. So I've used quite a lot because when I first started, as I mentioned, Colorbond was the one that I'd seen, so that was the first one that I used. Within 6 months of using that, I was involved in sort of a little network of other UPVC sprays. I did my research, was talking to other people who were sort of starting out in the industry, and there was clearly issues with, especially their 1K stuff. There was a lot of people getting callbacks on things. I had a couple of minor issues, nothing major, but it was a couple of really odd things, and I just thought it doesn't. I don't know how that's happened, but their answer always seemed to be, "You haven't done the prep right, or you haven't done this, or it is something to do with something else. It's not their problem," and it was more of their sort of attitude to customer service that pushed me right away from them, to be honest with you. So I did end up trying quite a few different products, and I have still. I mean, I used to get sent products by all these companies, independents that are trying to push their UPVC products, and I tried a lot of them. And Ceramix was probably the third product that I used, and I've never gone away from that in terms of for more than a single job. Like, there might have been something that someone sent me something, said this is good. I've tried it in the workshop. It's been okay. There's been some left over, anthracite, whatever. Okay, we'll use that on this job. See how it goes. But in terms of pretty much every job, it would be Ceramix for external. I have used and do recommend HMG, their PVC 17. I have used internally. Again, it's a solvent, not ideal to be spraying any solvents internally, but needs must. We do what we do. I am totally against water based. I don't use any water based products at all these days, even for the joinery and stuff. But I found internally that's absolutely fine. But I'm not sure I would trust a 1K externally the way that I trust Ceramix. And I think that that's just years of using it and never having a single callback that is product related in all that time. And that's using 5 different guys who are spraying on site. So that to me says this is a product that does what it says, and you use it right, there's no issues. There's nothing is going to come back to you on that. So there's no reason for me to have moved over to another brand, another product. No matter the cost of Ceramix is actually one of the cheaper ones, to be fair. So even if someone come to me and said, right, here's this product, it's half the price of Ceramix, it wouldn't matter to me at all. I would still go with what I know and what I trust.
I'll be honest. When I'd heard of Ceramix, I expected it to be more expensive.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
The price I'm paying now compared to what I was paying a few years ago is
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I can. Yeah, I mean, obviously, you've got that initial outlay of buying all the thinners, etc., that you're going to use
yeah,
for a lot more than you'd be using on one job, right?
yeah,
But um, when you actually break it down cost per liter, and yeah,
yeah,
you might save time physically asking for less products if you're buying a
yeah,
1K, but that's all you're saving
yeah,
on
yeah.
for the most part. Yeah, it's even the time in mixing is negligible, labor wise, when you think you still have to strain a lot of these 1Ks
Yeah, yeah,
anyway. So and talking of which, certainly for anybody who's listening who hasn't got into UPVC, one of the biggest call it quality of life improvements that I noticed when I got into spraying with air spray systems in general was PPS on site. It's such a under
Yes.
talked about thing. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously now there's so many different brands, all kind of look similar and
Yeah.
work basically the same, etc. But you know, PPS, you no straining,
No. No.
gun
Brilliant.
upside down, left, right, do a
Yeah.
dance, doesn't matter.
That is
Um,
the PPS is my sort of number two must-have item if you're going into UPVC spraying. It's just
100%.
yeah. I mean, I'm actually still using the 3M PPS, the original one. I've never moved over. I've got dozens and dozens of the hard cups and collars. So I've got loads of the adapters
The
as well.
adapters,
The
yeah, yeah.
price of those has absolutely rocketed. They used to be about £6 when I was buying them. I think are they like £20 now?
£25, yeah, not quite 25, about 22, £23. The thing that is weird though is, well, I guess it's not weird, kind of makes sense, I guess, is if you're buying Series 2 cups, you'll quite often get the adapters free. So it's almost like the price of them will go up as they sell less cups,
Yeah, yeah,
which, they've got to make their money somehow, right?
yeah, yeah. So,
Certainly, we've been using the Gurko cups,
yeah, yeah,
which are based on Series 1, but
yes,
they have
yeah,
some of the Series 2 improvements on it, which is rather nice, like full width of the lid for the filter,
yeah,
which is nice. I mean, that's more or less it, other than cost savings a little bit. If you like to use the caps to keep your paint, but obviously with what we're doing UPVC wise, that is almost irrelevant.
yeah. The only time
But
that I use those is if I know I'm doing X amount and I'm going to use more than just that.
one
For
cup, yeah, yeah.
double garage door, then
Hmm.
I know that I'll mix 2 cups up. So little lid on that,
Sticker,
stick
yeah,
it
yeah,
next to you, away you go straight away as soon as you finish
yeah.
that painting. Away you go.
I gotta say, for internal spraying, I did find the caps quite handy because
Yeah,
obviously you would you might use even 200 or 300 mils going around a room.
yeah,
Doing skirting boards, for
yeah,
example, whatever it is, maybe half a liter doing some spindles,
yeah,
and then you've got like a little bit left in the cup that you'll keep, and you can just leave it upside down so the filter
yeah,
stays wet. Job's a good one.
yeah.
The kind of equipment that we buy for these jobs, I think we've touched on a lot of what you would be using gun wise.
Yeah.
Obviously it's assumed, certainly I use a Gentlin. You're using Gentlin. Do you have any kind of experiences with any equipment that you should be avoiding?
Um, Other than oil-filled um, compressors, not really. I don't think there's anything that I've used that I would think I really want to stay away from that. There's certainly things that I use and I like. For instance, out of the hand maskers that are available, the 3M hand masker. I mean, that's my number one. Obviously, I just mentioned the PPS is my number two. The 3M hand masker, that is like tool number one. If you're going to do any spraying, you need one of those, like more than you need.
100%, yeah.
Is yeah, that's just I don't think I could do the job that I do. I turned up to a job once, and for some reason, some of the lads had taken some of the stuff, and I had no hand masker. It was only a garage door, but I had to manually put the tape on the paper and stick, and it took ages. And just
Yeah.
that, you take that for granted. Like it's on there, you can mask up in 5 minutes around the edge of a garage door, and all of a sudden, I'm like having to thread this on.
Do it like the old boys used to.
That's
Well,
it.
then
Yeah,
they
yeah.
probably wouldn't be using masking tape, or at least they like
No,
to tell us that anyway. So
yeah,
um,
cut in and brush it in.
that's it, mate. That's it. In terms of, you know, obviously your team and where you're at with the UPVC, um, did you find that there was a particular average output that one sprayer could achieve on a consistent basis? Something maybe that you would base your pricing on, how much you would need to get out with somebody. For those guys that are maybe looking to start a team,
Yeah.
maybe something to aim for, something where to start.
Yes. Yeah. So obviously, when I first started, it was me and my window fitter mate. So there was always two of us from the beginning on the windows. So we did that for a while, and the pricing we kind of kept in line with everybody else that we actually knew was doing it. We were probably slightly higher than most because we were down in Kent. Most of the guys that I knew that were doing it were based sort of around Manchester or a bit further up north, where the prices do tend to be that little bit less. So as it became more popular, we actually increased our prices a little bit and were that premium option. And because we were the first company in the southeast on Google doing it, we were positioned really well. It meant that we had that little bit of authority there above the competition anyway. So pricing wise, I've never really strayed away from that, and I've had there's I mean the profit margins on it. You're talking about a front door, £295, like I've said. If you buy one color, if it's a random color like a bright yellow, and you're only going to use it on that front door, let's say 25 quid for your litre of selling mix. You're probably going to use about 3 or 4 quid's worth of hardener and a couple of quid's worth of the thinner. So you're talking probably 30 quid all in for your paint, a couple of quid in masking and tape and paper. I think if you said 40 quid all in for your materials for a front door, that is £250 in your pocket, like, just for that, and in 2 hours. So that compared to your decorating, your £150 a day on site for your 8 hours of time, that is a massive, massive profit margin. If you're then talking about that litre of paint being anthracite grey, that does 7 front doors, and that will then that just cuts the cost of that product completely, and the profit margins rocket. When you're talking about windows, the amount of money that you're charging for a window, we actually based this our pricing on the cost of replacing. So we had the guy was obviously a window fitter. We had a price list from the supplier to replace the windows. He knew the cost for fitting and how many they get done in a day, how they work that, and we worked on that. So our pricing was 50% of the cost of new. That kind of, I've kept that price. I imagine they've gone up a bit now in terms of replacing them, but that is sort of where we are situated in the market. So we're not doing it by time equals X amount of pounds. We are doing it by, this is a specialist service. This is something that you either do this or you replace your windows. So you either pay £2,000 or you pay £1,000. And that for us has just worked brilliantly as just as a whole in the business. It's just the whole insight of that from the customer is that these are the two options I've got. I've not got a guy here who's coming to paint these windows, and I was only taking him a day to do 9 windows. They just don't view it like that, and I think it's just because it's sound specialist. It's a mental thing for the customer. I don't think there's many other trades or industries where you can price like that. I suppose it's like I don't know, a bespoke blind manufacturer or something like that. That's something that they will only be able to get from select people. That will be expensive. They have to pay that money.
For sure, yeah.
If it's a decorator, there's so much competition. They can go. It's one of those. So I just think niching yourself and making yourself a specialist in whatever it is really key to actually having a successful and profitable business.
Well, I've got to agree with you there. Certainly, I've got to say I personally feel quite a shift in attitude, or did feel a shift in attitude when I moved from being a decorator to being a sprayer. Not in every case, but just as a general rule, you could just tell that people had a different attitude about what you were doing than if you had a brush and a roller in your hand.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying one's better than the other. I just think that customers view it differently.
Yeah.
in what they expect, etc. as well. And I definitely think that as far as obviously the money we charge for the service is justified given, the investment you need to make in terms of
Yeah, and
time to
especially,
become, to become actually efficient enough to make good money from it. Because it, again, it's one of those things where, because you need another person, because things can become unexpectedly delayed
yeah,
because of weather and things like that, you can quickly lose money on it so you do need a good margin,
yeah,
basically.
yeah, 100%. Yeah,
Um,
and obviously you can only do it for 6 months of the year theoretically.
yeah, yeah,
Um, like realistically, you're not going to do great deal more than that. So if that was your sole business and you were only doing that, you need to be earning double what you would if you was doing something else anyway all year round. So
for
yeah,
sure.
it's like a swings and roundabout kind of thing there.
Definitely.
Going back to your actual question, I kind of bypassed it and went around it a little bit. In terms of like how much work the team would have to do to justify their sort of being there, we actually aimed per two-man team would need to bring in £1,000 of revenue a day, which sounds like a lot to somebody who's earning, I don't know, 180 quid a day. It sounds like that's a hell of a lot of work, but actually that is free front doors. You're pretty well there. Free front doors for a two-man team, and that's a very easy day if they're all within a sort of a couple of mile radius or whatever. Obviously, it wasn't free front doors every day for every team because, I mean, that would be nice. To be
That
fair,
would be very
but
nice.
if you're talking like the front and back of a house, it's got, I don't know, 18, 20 windows on it, a couple of sets of French doors, a couple of patio doors. You're then talking sort of £4,000-5,000 worth of spraying. So you've got a week's worth of work there for two guys, or we'd chuck four on that and probably get it done in two. Then we've beaten that target there as well. So we had different ways of working it, and in terms of what I was sort of paying my guys, I actually ended up with I've had a bit of a mix, to be honest with you. So I've had guys that I've had on day rates that if they beat the targets, they'd then get a bonus as well. And then I've also had guys who were employed. To be fair, one in particular, he was like my main foreman guy. He was just the one that I could absolutely trust that whatever happened, even if a job went wrong, which I mean, things happen, jobs do go wrong, he'd be back there the next day or on a Saturday of his own time, making sure it's sorted out. I think it's having somebody like that on your side in your team is very important. But I also think that to get that, you need to make sure they're very well rewarded. So he was actually on a very silly amount of money as a basic, but then would also earn a commission or a percentage of the profits on the job. But I worked that because I just thought that was a very fair way of doing it for the work that he put in and the management that he did of his part of the team as well. Um, I think it's important to reward people who are helping you. So there is a time and a place for that. That wasn't something that I did obviously in my first year or 2 years of running the business. This is when we're sort of doing £350,000 turnover a year. We're hitting some nice targets. Then that there's cash flow in the business. It's all running nicely. But that obviously that takes time to build up. But I would say if you've got someone who you can trust and who will do a good job, make sure that they are looked after, because the minute you lose them, a lot of stuff goes out the window.
For sure, for sure. Listen, it's been great to get some insight into your experience in UPVC and other aspects of spraying in general. It's definitely something that anybody can get into, but only a few people really get to the level you took it. And
Yeah,
I think that there is a lot of opportunity out there. Some people say that it's dead because there's too many people doing it or whatever like that. I think it's nonsense.
yeah,
We are in a country full of vinyl windows, UPVC windows. Vinyl for our American friends,
yeah,
and so many people are sick of staring at boring white UPVC
yeah,
windows, basically. And I don't see it slowing down. You know, even people with coloured windows now are getting them sprayed to another colour
Yeah,
because they can,
yeah,
basically.
yeah.
One final thought that would sum up any kind of critical thing that would help somebody just getting fresh into this line of work, what do you think might really help somebody?
Um, I would say just concentrate on quality and don't rush. Um, I think it's very important, and this is something that I said a lot when running the courses. So you've got guys who are excited to get out there and go and do some work. Put in that time to have a practice. Go to your local UPVC supplier, get some scrap windows from them, have a practice, get your finishing right first. Then when you go out on site, just make sure that you're taking your time. Don't try and do 5 windows in a day. The money that you're earning on the windows, um, just take that into consideration. If you're doing 2 windows in a day, you're talking about 400 quid as an absolute minimum, really. That is more than you're earning on the brush doing, I don't know, a bedroom or whatever. Um, so don't think, right, I'm going to go out and earn £800 today. Go out and think, right, I'm going to do a really good job today, because that's where your business will improve and increase, and the reputation is a massive thing, and just building trust. And I think the only way you can do that is providing quality first and foremost.
Fantastic, fantastic. And I've got to say, I fully agree. You can't rush these things. You know, people will remember forever that you did a great job.
Yeah,
So, you know, and the money is good in there. So use that to your advantage. You can use that to really spend the time to make sure that their windows look amazing when you leave. So, uh, yeah, top job on that. Uh, I guess before we go, is there anything perhaps that you want to plug? Anything that you've got going on? Anything you want to tell anyone about? Maybe any more Dulux dates that people can know about that they can come along to? Anything like that?
to be honest with you, no, not really. The Dulux stuff at the moment is still being worked on in the background, so there'll be some updates coming in the near future, I would imagine. Um, and yeah, no, I think that's about it really. Nothing,
Fantastic.
nothing to push out here
Well,
on that part.
just seen behind me the street lights have come on, so I
Yeah,
think we've crossed the threshold of the day now, so to speak.
my
But it is Friday night and right now, so I'm hoping to get this out on Sunday. So I'll make sure I tag you and whatnot once I release it. But thanks a lot for coming along, James. It's been great to have a chat with you about this, and I'm sure it will be of use to at least some people out there. I don't know how many people are going to listen to this. I'm just putting these up, hoping for the best, you know. But
Well, having me, it's been a pleasure, and good to actually sort of see you face to face. I've been in
absolutely,
those forums for some time now, so yeah.
yeah, we've been chatting for years, and we've never really had a face-to-face talk before. Maybe I'll see you at a convention next year. I meant to be going to the one in Manchester this year, but I was on my honeymoon, so I couldn't go. But maybe you might see me in Coventry if you'll be there. I don't know if you're
Do
likely
you
to
know
be
what?
there.
I'm not sure yet. I may well be with the academy, so we shall see. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, fingers crossed, mate. And yeah, thanks again. And we're signing off. Thanks, guys,
Lovely.
for coming. And I'll make sure we get another episode up very soon. Thanks, guys.